The next few days and weeks are going to be busy here in Ottawa. Incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney has to be sworn in. So does a new cabinet. And we are expecting an election call as soon as next week. Just how close of a race could Canadians be in for? Nick Nanos is Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research, and he has some brand new numbers to help us answer that question. Hey, Nick, good to see you. The race kept getting tighter and tighter over the past few weeks. It's now extremely tight, according to your latest numbers. Tell us about them.
Vash, did you have a coin for me to toss so that we can do that statistical coin toss?
Yeah. You know, like we got a horse race.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing is, there's only 1 percentage point between the Conservatives and the Liberals, basically within the margin of error for the survey. The margin of error is plus or minus 3%. So basically a coin toss right now between the Conservatives and the Liberals. NDP down 15, which is not good for the Orange team, right? And that's helped the Liberals over the last couple of weeks. You know, Bloc's still doing okay in the province of Quebec. Green Party's actually been down too. So we've seen movement from the Greens and the NDP to the Liberals, kind of like the scenario that the Conservatives don't want, that coalescence of progressive voters around the Liberals.
And let's talk a little bit about how fast you've seen those numbers move, right? Because 6 weeks ago, a month ago, how different were they than they are today? Like, how fast has that change occurred?
Well, 6 weeks ago, it was like 47-20. So just think for the Conservatives, they're down 11 points in the last number of weeks, and the Liberals are up 15 points in the last 6 to 7 weeks. So, you know, what we're seeing is basically, I'd call it a whiplash, right? It's kind of like, whoa, these numbers have significantly changed. Now, we have to remember, when the numbers change like this, they could always change back, because you know what? The trend line has not solidified. It's going to take a couple more weeks to see whether the Liberals can consolidate or whether the Conservatives can punch back. So, you know, just because the Liberals are trending up now doesn't mean that they'll continue.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because I was curious. I've been thinking, you know, in the past few days, is it that they are here on the ascent, or is this the peak, or how do you ultimately determine that?
Well, you know, one of the things that we look at is accessible voters, whether people would consider or not consider. It's kind of like, are you on the political menu for for Canadians? And over the last 6 weeks, an increasing number of Canadians have said that they'd be open to voting Liberal. That's been on the upswing, about 10 to 15 points. And the proportion of Canadians that are open to voting Conservative has gone down, which means whatever the Conservatives have done in the last few weeks has turned off some voters who basically said, you know what, I might have voted for the Conservatives 8, 9, 10 weeks last year, but that now they're taking them off the political menu. That's what the Conservatives have to really worry about.
And you were in the field for this concluding Friday, right?
Yep.
So that's before the announcement of Mark Carney officially. I mean, I think people had a sense that he would be the leader, but the official announcement.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see whether there's any further impact of the Liberal leadership. And you know, the Conservatives are running ads hard throughout the Liberal leadership. Yeah, on your show.
Everyone's show, yeah. Yeah, and just jumping off that, preferred Prime Minister, you've got some numbers there as well, I think.
Yeah.
You can pull them up on the screen. Poilievre sitting at 33.1. Trudeau, because that's who was still Prime Minister at the time of the survey, 29.9.
Yeah, and you know what? Pierre Poilievre down 9 points in the last 4 weeks as preferred Prime Minister. So you just think of it this way, Vashi, the ballot numbers are going down for the Conservatives. Accessible voters are going down for the Conservatives. The proportion of Canadians that would give Pierre Poilievre a tip of the hat as Prime Minister going down over the last number of weeks. So, you know, the Conservatives got to turn this around. They've got to pivot. So maybe the lesson here is whatever the Conservatives are doing now, it is not working. It is not working. They have to pivot and change in order to try to fight this trend line.
Well, let me ask you about that to conclude, because you know, you've done some great surveys as well about what people care about and what's going to influence their vote. And one that jumped out at me over the weekend was this one about the degree to which that's going to be Donald Trump. I think that there's a bit of an aversion to the idea of pivot for Conservatives, because they keep saying, look, we're putting out policy when it has to do with Donald Trump. We know their ads are very much focused on Mark Carney right now, and you can see those numbers about what influences your vote up there. What is your sense of, like, what the discussion is going to be about?
I think the discussion is going to be about Donald Trump, and that's going to be the focus and the lens for voters for both the Conservatives and the Liberals. You know, realistically, the Conservatives probably should be running ads about Donald Trump and what Pierre Poilievre, what his position is on that, how he is different, and how he would manage that. He's got to build his brand. He's got to look like a Prime Minister in waiting, right? Because obviously that's what he wants. He wants to win the election, and they want to form the government. He has to start looking like a Prime Minister in waiting, when the reality is these ads reinforce him as the opposition leader. right? He's attacking the other side and he's not building himself up.
And what about Mark Carney? When you look at where the Liberals sit right now, where they have sat in the past, including in particular what happened last year and how low they had sunk, like what are the vulnerabilities for them under Mark Carney in your view?
I think we've got to call it the way it is, which he's politically unproven. Right, this Liberal leadership was, softball, puffball, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't tough by any stretch of the imagination. When he's toe to toe with Pierre Poilievre, we'll see the metal that Mark Carney is made out of. So he is untested because he's never been elected, right? And love or hate Pierre Poilievre, he is battle hardened, he is focused, and he is disciplined. So, he's going to step into the ring and he's going to land some punches. So I think the big question is Mark Carney. Yes, he's not a professional politician. That's a good thing, but that's also a potential vulnerability for him.
If the numbers stay where they are and they remain this close as we look ahead to what could be, a start next week of the election campaign, I don't think it's going to be an 8-week or a longer one. I think it's going to be somewhere around 5 weeks long. What are going to be the big markers? Will a debate, for example, matter more? What stuff will potentially turn the dial?
Well, this could be a lot like 1988, Vashi, where the debate was actually one of the critical junctures, the debate between John Turner and then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. So the debates are going to be critical, and I think people are going to tune in. I think this is, politicians always say this is an important election. Well, you know what? Everybody knows this is actually a very important election because it's going to determine who is going to lead the campaign for Canada against the United States and also lead Canada in a kind of a new world and a new economy. So this is going to be an important election. People are going to tune in, and we don't know yet whether it'll only be a horse race or a horse race and a car crash, and who the car crash might be.
Oh gosh, hopefully there's no crashes anywhere. Nick, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Nick Nanos is the Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research with those new numbers.